we're all very familiar with the story of the Buddha after his awakening and setting out on his quest for so-called enlightenment. He went through many vicissitudes and austerities until he came to the Bodhi tree, where he sat and said, "I'm not moving from here until it's done." And the dancing girls came, the temptresses. The fiery demons came to try to consume him. And the messianic temptations came. But he remained completely unmoved. And at a certain moment, he got up and spent the next 40 years being the Buddha. But remembering that every character and every symbol and every archetype represents an aspect of our self. There is that story of the rabbi. He was a pragmatic and scholarly man who had an only son, we'll call Yuri. Now Yuri followed in the footsteps of his father. He was scholarly, studying the ancient texts, learning the rituals of the faith and so forth. And because they lived in Jerusalem, where there was a center of knowledge and faith at the time, all things were available to them. But Yuri was also a dreamer. And one night he had a dream that he needed to travel to a far distant place to meet a certain man, a certain sage. So the next day he told his father about his dream and asked his father to take him to meet this sage. But his father said, "You have all that you need right here. Here we have the fount of knowledge, all the ancient text. We know nothing about this man except the stories that are told about him." But this dream came back to Yuri again and again, and he begged his father to take him to meet this man. But each time it was brought up, the father would deter Yuri from going, but Yuri began to grow pale, pallid and quiet and still, until finally his father conceded and decided to take his ailing son on this quest to meet this man. When they set out, first of all, after some while, the wheel of their wagon fell off, and really going quite against his nature, the father said to Yuri, "Oh, this is a sign that we should not be making this journey. Let us go back from where we came." So the father insisted that they return to Jerusalem. But again, Yuri pined, longing to fulfill what was brought to him in this dream. And seeing his son grow ever more wan, the father again conceded, and they set out once again. But this time a great storm came just as they were reaching a river, and the river flooded. But again the father, going against his nature, said, "Here, this is another sign we should not be making this travel." And he would not wait until the waters receded so that they could cross the river to resume their journey. So again they returned to their home. But again Yuri grew more pale each day until his father, desperate, decided to set out once again. They made the journey, but they arrived at the town, the place where the sage was said to abide, but it was late at night, so they decided to stay at an inn that was along the way, just outside the city center. And whilst they were in the inn, having their evening repast, the father got into conversation with, it seemed, another traveller, who asked him where they were going. And when the father related that they were going to see such and such a sage, the traveller said, "Oh, him! He's the greatest fraud that you've ever heard of. Haven't you known that he's known to be false?" And so again the father said, "Now it is known. This is a useless journey. We will return from whence we came." So they did, even though Yuri begged and pleaded with his father to continue. So they returned, and very soon thereafter, Yuri died. The father was inconsolable, his only son gone. But during that time of mourning, Yuri came to his father and begged him, go and meet this sage." 3 times the dream came to the father, each time Yuri pleading with him to go. And so he did. The father set out on the journey, and without impediment he arrived at the inn they had stayed at. And surprisingly, in that inn he met the same traveller who he had met before, and telling the traveller of what had happened, the traveller was elated and said to the father, "I am Satan. I am the devil, and it is I who intervened to stop the 2 great forces of life that your son and the great sage represent, because had they met and united, it would have called down the Messiah." So, it's not the usual bent to interpret stories, but doing so on this occasion, interpreting it in the way of the Tao, those two great forces of nature, known in different ways, stillness and movement, form and formlessness, emptiness and fullness. What do they bring when they come together? In the story being spoken of as calling down the Messiah. Putting these two together, we can ask ourselves, what does it mean to be unmoved? What does it mean to be in a place under a Bodhi tree, unmoved by the ever-changing experiences, perceptions, adventures of life? What does it mean when these two come together, described as calling down the Messiah, knowing that it can only happen when we reach the place that the Buddha did to arrive at that state and place where we are unmoved? What does it mean for us to be unmoved?